The 309th Amarg stores the world's largest collection of military aircraft here in the Arizona desert.
I like to call this the ugliest plane out here, the YC-14. It was an aircraft that never went into production.
800 mechanics work nonstop, reclaiming critical parts and regenerating aircraft so they can go back into service.
I can't just pull over an airplane like you can a car, and we have to make sure that these aircraft are safe to fly. Our goal is not to be like a cemetery for the aircraft.
That's Colonel Barnard. She's served 25 years as a U.S. Air Force aircraft maintenance officer.
As a commander here, I am in charge of the whole operation. The assets stored here are worth somewhere between $34 and $35 billion if you were to try to replace them all. It's a big number.
She took us inside this massive facility to see how these military planes get a second chance at life. Amarg got its start back in 1946. After World War II, the Army needed a place to store old planes. They chose Davis-Monthan Air Force Base, here in Tucson. With nearly 2,000 football fields worth of open desert, there was plenty of space. Arizona has the perfect weather for storing these assets. It's hot, there's little rainfall, no humidity, and the soil?
It's as hard as concrete.
So planes won't sink.
The dryness as well as the lack of acidity in the soil prevent corrosion on the assets.
Aircraft come here from the Department of Defense, military, other government agencies, and foreign allies.
We have about 3,100 airplanes. The planes are mostly military. They come from the Air Force, the Navy, the Army, and the Marines. We have over 80 different types of airplanes here.
Planes and helicopters arrive and are lined up in sections. Some aircraft will be here for weeks before they're called back into service. Other aircraft can be here for 50 years, similar to this A4 Skyhawk. Each plane goes through a preservation process before it's put in the desert. Those that may fly again are re-preserved every 4 years. They're defueled, then oil is pumped through the engine to preserve it.
The black material that we have on here is the base layer that seals up the aircraft. And then later, as you can see the rest of the aircraft around here, the coats on top are white, and those white coats will reflect the heat, so it better preserves the assets all on the inside of the aircraft.
But not every plane just sits around collecting dust. U.S. military units around the world can request specific parts off these planes.
An aircraft has so many thousands of parts. Just like a reservoir keeps things in case you need them, and then we release what's out of the reservoir as needed.
And some of the parts the military can only find here at Amarg.
We are that assurance that there's a part available when the supply system main sources don't get it. We send anywhere from 4,000 to 7,000 parts out every year to the tune of a few $1 million each week worth of supply parts.
But sometimes, instead of being used for parts, an entire plane will be regenerated, meaning they'll pull it out of the desert and wash it down.
We have to remove all the coatings that are used to preserve the aircraft out in the desert.
After getting a nice shower, it's fixed up. The unit also handles aircraft modifications.
These aircraft come from U.S. units that are active right now, and then they get some work done on them, and they go back out to that same unit. We're able to upgrade those and modify them to keep them up with the current standards in the active fleet.
Complicated individual pieces are sent to separate back shops for repair and overhaul. Once parts are fixed, they go through a thorough inspection.
We're here in the non-destructive inspection area. Pete's working on a fluorescent dye penetrant.
It's basically a liquid that absorbs into cracks, and we can apply a black light to it, and you can see there's a crack right here that shows up. This crack right here on this part in the landing gear could cause catastrophic failure on the landing gear.
Not a single crack on an entire plane can get past this team. Once fixed, the planes go through a rigorous final flight test. Pilot Scott Thompson is testing these regenerated F-16s.
We test flight controls and the handling and the engine performance and all the systems on the plane pretty extensively at all altitudes.
That's a happy ending for a plane pulled from the desert here at Amarg. But for other aircraft, this is the end of the line. The planes marked with a big D go through pre-demilitarization and then are destroyed by a third-party contractor. The planes are demolished for good reason.
To make sure everything's accounted for and that the materials and the technology don't fall into the wrong hands.